Bezrat Hashem, let's get started. Pirkei Avot. Mashu yoter fun. So, in Pirkei Avot, we're starting here, Pirkei Mishnah Tet Zayin. So, we're going to learn today about Avat Tluya B'davar and Avat She'ena Tluya B'davar. We spoke about this recently. We learned this, but we didn't do it together. So we're going to do it together. So it's very interesting. Face value, I tell you, what's Avat Tluya B'davar? What's Avat She'ena Tluya B'davar? What's the difference? Literally it means love that's dependent on something, love that's not dependent on something. So ma'achiluk, what's the difference?
It's like a woman likes you because you have money.
Okay.
And a woman loves you because she loves you.
הוא צודק. מה? הוא צודק. מאה אחוז. You're saying תלויה בדבר would mean she loves you because of your money, and אינה תלויה בדבר means
it's because she loves you because of you, because you personality, you who you are, you know,
so,
the way you act.
Good, I agree with what you're saying. We're going to see Tiferes Yisrael gives a beautiful explanation here, because in the second case you just said she still loves you for something.
She's always going to love you for something, always. For your face,
so then we have to know, what does it mean? What you're describing is a woman loves you for your money, or a woman loves you for who you are. The question is, they're both tluya b'davar, they're both contingent on something.
Something material, basically.
Material.
Yeah.
So some of the mefarshim here learn it means davar batel. Tluya b'davar batel. It's taloy on something that's not important. Okay, so that's good.
Yeah.
But we're going to see Tiferes Yisrael gives a bit of a different explanation. Beautiful idea. We'll go through after we see the Mishnah. So says the Mishnah, Mishnah Tet Zayin, Kol ha'ava she'i tluya b'davar, any love that is dependent on something. Batel davar, when that something is batel, it's nullified, it stops.
Right.
B'teila ahava, the ahava also stops.
Yeah.
It's no longer existent. B'she'ena tluya b'davar, and if it's not dependent on something, eina b'teila le'olam, that love is never going to be batel. It's always going to continue. Okay? What is the example of love that's dependent on something? What? No, tluya. First tluya. What is the avat that's tluya? What is avat that's dependent on something? Zu avat Amnon v'Tamar. What is the story of avat Amnon v'Tamar? So Amnon was one of the children of David HaMelech, the sons. Tamar, this is not the same Tamar in the Torah that Yehuda had relations with and came Mashiach from. This is a different Tamar. This Tamar, the Mefarshim speak out, was a daughter of David, but not really a daughter of David. It was a daughter of the wife of David. So it was not really his daughter.
Oh.
And the story goes over there that Amnon, who was the son of David HaMelech, had a great desire to have relations with her. And what happened over there is he created a fake scenario to get her to be with him by himself. He forced her to have relations with him. He raped her. And terrible story. And the pasuk tells us, after he had relations with her, he hated her more than he loved her before he had relations with her. Meaning, it was all contingent, as the Mefarshim speak out here. Either it was taloy an mi'uf, he didn't really love her, he wanted to have relations, or he loved her beauty, but he didn't really love her. It was all something that was tluya b'davar. So once you lose that, meaning once that was satisfied, it's not going to be anymore that love. But for she'ena tluya b'davar, what's an example of ahava that's not dependent on something? Zu ahavat David v'Yehonatan. So this is a famous story. David and Yehonatan, we know the king of the Jewish people at the time was Shaul HaMelech.
Yeah.
It was the first Jewish king. Shaul HaMelech was a very, very big tzaddik, and because of certain things that he did wrong, he was meant to lose the malchut, and it was going to go to David. But Shaul had a son whose name was Yehonatan, and Yehonatan loved David so much that he was willing to say, I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed you're going to become the king. I accept you to be the king, and I'll be happy to be your second in command. He loved David so much, even though it was at the expense of his own father. It's an unbelievable thing. And he saved David's life. There's whole stories in the Navi talks about it. So that's the example of ahava she'ena tluya b'davar. And that's eina b'teila le'olam. That love is permanent. Now we have to ask and we have to understand is, how do we define exactly this ahava that's tluya, not tluya? So we gave a little bit of a description now. Maybe it means it's talui on davar batel, like an insignificant thing, or a significant, we'll see. But the different Mefarshim speak out different pshatim. We are going to go through the Tiferes Yisrael. He gives a beautiful explanation as to what this difference is. So let's see. I'll read it to you. The Tiferes Yisrael says like this. What is ahava tluya b'davar? So he says, Ratza lomar b'davar emtzai shu chutz miguf ha'ohev v'ne'ahav. Ahava that's dependent on something is something that is outside of the body of the one who is loving and the one being loved. Kegon, for example, ahavat adam l'meitivo. A person loves someone who does good things for him. Now, is that because he loves the other person? No. Actually, what does he love?
The things that they do for
He actually loves himself. Because he enjoys the good things that the other person does for him, so really he loves himself.
Yeah.
It's not that he loves the other person. It's what he's accepting, receiving from the other person that he enjoys. So really he loves himself. He doesn't love the other person. It's something outside of them that he appreciates. So essentially, if really he loves himself, that's really the idea. So when it's something outside of the bodies of the one who is loving and being loved, that is tluya b'davar. And we said if that thing stops, if the beneficiary stops giving me candy, so I don't like that guy anymore because it's directly talui only on that thing. Now what's the other example? It's not tluya b'davar. So he says rak b'teva. We're talking about a love that is a natural love. Ki avat adam lebanav u'lemishpachto. Like the love that a person has for his children and for his family. O ba'sechel. Or we're talking about love of sechel, of intellectual growth. Growing in Torah. She'ahav adam et esek ha'chochma. Maybe somebody loves pursuing chochma, wisdom. Ve'et hanaga yeshara, an appropriate behavior. Ve'et hayirat shamayim. Or somebody who loves to learn more about yirat shamayim, grow in yirat shamayim. Spiritual growth. If you ask a person, why do you love these things? Why do you love your son? Why do you love chokhmah? Why do you love these things? It's very interesting. He can't give a very clear answer for that matter. That's what it means. It's not talui b'davar. It means you can't necessarily vocalize why you love those things. It's just a natural reality. Naturally, we're drawn to love our children. That's the reality. Okay? Right. Oh, Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abayim, welcome back. But he says, on this note, that's only where he loves the Chokhmah. Aval, sheyahav adam lechacham. If you have a person who loves a chacham, right? Ulabal midot yesharot ulatzadik, right? These righteous people are tzadikim. Gam ken mechshav tluya b'davar. That's tluya b'davar. Because why do you love them? You love a chacham. Why? Darei kisheyafsik hachacham mila'asok b'chochma batel davar b'tibatel ahava. If you love the chacham because he's providing you with chochma, so again, that's talui b'davar. Now, if you love the chokhmah, so then that's not tluya b'davar.
Why?
Very interesting. Oh, because if the chacham stops teaching you chokhmah, so then you don't love him anymore. Meaning, if it's that's also considered tluya b'davar. By the way, it's not necessarily exactly. It's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just the reality. It's the reality. That's the reality. It's okay. So he continues and he says, now what the Mishnah is addressing with these examples is as follows. You might be mistaken and say, ahavat niuf, that even the love of adultery, because you love the woman for who she is, so maybe that's also considered not tluya b'davar. So the example we give with Amnon and Tamar is to illustrate that's still considered tluya b'davar. V'haraya, we see over there,
you love yourself, not
you love yourself. It's the same thing. And he continues on and he explains a beautiful idea. Listen to this. So you might say. You might ask, "Ulam shelo tikshem ken echan matzinu ahava sheben adam lechavero shelo tiyeh tluya b'davar ma." How could we find an example based on what we just explained that is not tluya on something?
I'm going to ask this.
She'iyaf efshar shetinatel v'tibatel me'anehav, that when you remove it, it won't take away the love. Va'avat av leben eina machrat. You can't bring a proof from a father to a son. De'ina rak ahavat atzmo, because really, father and a son, he loves himself. And what does it mean?
Why?
When you love your son is a piece of you.
Yeah.
Literally a piece of you, meaning he's a product of you and your wife, but he's a product of you. So the idea of loving your son, that's not a good example for in general. Where else do we find that there's a love of two people that is not considered a father and a son, where there's a direct biological connection between them?
Okay.
It's like a person who loves his hand or his leg. You can't call that love necessarily, meaning you care for your leg, you care for your son. It's a natural thing. But where else do we find that? And that's the example that's brought. What's the example that's brought? David and Yehonatan. שלא הייתה תלויה בשום דבר בעולם, והייתה גדולה במידתה כאהבת אב לבן. One second. שאי אפשר שתיבטל. אפילו כשלא יתנהג הבן כשורה. Even if the son acts inappropriately, כמו שכתבנו, and he gives examples. We know David HaMelech had a terrible son whose name was Avshalom. Avshalom rebelled against him, tried to kick him out, and still David loved him. The Psukim tell us, still he loved him.
Father and son, that's the one that is not talui b'davar.
Oh, so what he's saying
not,
here,
the other guy,
so listen to this.
David and Shlomo.
So I think it's a big lesson here. Listen to this.
I'm listening.
You see, father and a son, he's saying, that's natural. Just like you love your leg, or you care for your leg, you care for your son. But he says it could be found, the same idea, elsewhere, like the Mishnah illustrates, David and Yehonatan. So you have to understand, though, what's the pshat? Meaning, it's not biological like a father and a son. So how is it that that's possible to be einat tluya b'davar? So what's the answer to that, Yosef? How is it possible to be?
You see, I believe, the way I understand, it's father and son is not really talui b'davar.
Mm-hmm. It's
I
not.
don't like my son when he do a lot of things, but because he's my son, I love him.
Exactly,
It's not,
exactly, 100%.
right?
But how is it possible that David and Yehonatan is like that as well?
That's why I don't understand.
So
because
that's the answer.
what's
The
that?
answer is what's the pshat father and a son? Is a father looks at his son naturally. It's not like you think about it. It's just natural. The reality is, you have a child, you naturally look at that child like you look at your leg.
Oh, I see.
So the answer is, it's natural.
Because of his your son.
He's part of you, literally part of you. So 1 second. David and Yehonatan, the Mishnah is illustrating, reached a level where they understood they were connected to a degree that it became natural for them to love each other like a father and a son.
Oh, I see.
You understand? So what's the answer then? How does one reach a level of einat tluya b'davar? It means when you understand you're connected with another person deeply, strongly, like that, like father and a son. That's a very high level, obviously.
Yeah.
So then the love, the care that you have for them, it's not something that you think about. It's natural. It becomes the reality in life.
Yeah,
if you really connect with people.
But if you love him so much, like
Right.
those two, you
Right.
love him, there's a reason for it. Either you love his personality
100%.
or this.
So
it is talui by that guy.
100%.
If that guy will change his mind and start doing different things.
100%.
Not love
So
him.
what I would say, like according to what you're saying, is these loves. By father and son, it's just totally natural.
Yeah.
By these other examples, maybe it started off taloy on something,
I see, yeah.
but the
And then
connection that was formed was such that now already it's beyond explanation.
Yeah.
It's beyond davar. It's beyond something. Now, obviously, that's a very high level. Maybe if you have one good friend like that.
Very few people.
Very few. Yeah. What are you asking? אוהבת רחל, כן.
אז זה בשביל דבר.
בשביל מה?
שהוא רוצה להתחתן איתו.
רצה להתחתן איתה, רצה לבנות עם ישראל איתה.
בסדר.
כן.
זה תלוי
שבא
בדבר.
עליה.
Again, you're right. It may be starting off, these relationships perhaps start off in that way, but once it becomes so connected, it's not contingent on something that's it's not something outside. It's something that's...
even something changed with the other person, you still love him.
Exactly. So perhaps, by the way, it could be, I'm just pointing out, a husband and wife, it could be, you start off, you like her for X, Y, and Z, but eventually you develop and you can hear this idea that it's einat tluya b'davar. That could be eventually.
what I say, with Rahel, they have דבר, הוא רוצה להתחתן.
Right.
אחר כך, במקום רחל הוא קיבל את לאה, בשביל לאה הוא לא תכנן להתחתן. אז זה בשבילו דבר. לאחד יש לו אינטרס והשני בלי אינטרס.
Shameh. All right, good. We'll stop here. We'll pick up with Yud Zayin tomorrow.